Quote, love, unquote, by New Amsterdam. Chapter 2. Sero sits at the breakfast nook, looking distinctly out of place. Kirishima remembers him as several years younger, when he was made up of mostly elbows and knees. He's still lanky, but he's grown into his height. Kirishima can't help but notice the stack of dirty dishes in the sink, the crumpled magazines, and the sheet music that litters the kitchen and spills into the living room. In contrast with Sero, who looks like he's just stepped out of a photo shoot, Kirishima feels grubby and unkempt. But Sero doesn't affect that attitude. He glances around the apartment, an almost wistful smile on his face, until his eyes land on a framed, enlarged magazine article on the wall opposite the sink. "Get ready to riot," the article reads. The photograph is taken at an upshot angle, Ashido dominating the center of the frame. Her hands are clasped around a microphone, her skin tinged a rosy pink with exhilaration as she shuts her eyes and sings. The dark makeup around her eyes is slightly smudged, giving her a raccoon's look that somehow still works for her. Just behind her is Jiro, her guitar almost vertical as her fingers find the right chord. The moment before, she'd shed her trademark leather jacket, leaving her in a deep purple tank top and ripped jeans. Off to one side is Kaminari at his drum set, drumsticks moving so quickly that in the photo they're just two blurred lines. The steel drums catch the light, along with the silver jewelry hanging off Kaminari's neck and glinting from his ears. And then, far to one side, is Kirishima. His gaze is fixed downwards as he strums his cherry-red guitar, but he's smiling, happy enough in the moment to just be playing music, almost unaware of the crowd around him, the hands reaching up from below the stage. Now, seeing Sero staring at the picture, he blushes and scratches the back of his neck. "What?" he asks, when Sero doesn't look away. For a moment, Sero's smile shifts into a sharp frown. Then he shakes his head. "Nothing. I guess the media still loves Ashido, huh?" Kirishima shrugs. "She's the lead singer. Of course they'd focus on her." "Of course you'd let them," Sero mutters. "What was that?" Kirishima asks. It sounds too much like the starting notes of an old fight, one that he really doesn't want to relive right now. They've all moved on from it. Ashido and Kirishima to this new band, Sero to being Bakugou Katsuki's agent. Which reminds him, "What did you come here to say, Sero?" Sero smiles again, bashful this time. He looks more like himself, even when he rests his elbows on his knees and fixes Kirishima with a dark-eyed stare. "It's a little awkward," he starts. Kirishima rolls his eyes. "Dude, this is already the most awkward day I've had in a while. And last week, I saw Present Mike in his underwear." Sero shudders at Kirishima's words, then laughs. It cuts through the tension of the room, and when Sero starts up again, his voice is more relaxed. "I told you, didn't I? The media caught you and Bakugo together last night. I don't know what you were doing, but this is going to cause some issues." Kirishima thinks of Uraraka, and his heart drops into the pit of his stomach. She's going to see that photograph. She's going to see her boyfriend, leaned over another guy, a guy she took pity on and spent the better part of last night with. What will she think? How could Kirishima have done this to her? Bakugo wasn't out, Sero was saying. I mean, he's still not, technically. But there's only so many ways to explain a picture like that. "Sero," Kirishima says with a nervous laugh. "Nothing happened. Like, seriously. I don't even know why he was over there, and he just came up to me and—" Kirishima waves his hands, gesturing ineffectually. Then Sero's words register, and Kirishima's jaw drops. "We were trying to keep the stunt with Uraraka-san so no one would figure it out," Sero was saying, even though there's a grin pulling at the corner of his lips as he looks at Kirishima. "I mean, Bakugo's never really been interested in anyone. But then, apparently right before I started working with him, he really started pushing for roles that were beyond what his agency could tolerate. So, he switched over to the agency I work for. But I don't think anyone was ready to start casting Bakugou Katsuki as the romantic lead in gay films." "He's gay?" Kirishima says, as his heart starts beating against his ribs like a bird trapped in a cage. Sero shrugs. "I mean, probably. He's definitely not interested in women, but he tolerates Uraraka-san, so it was easy enough to stage a few things. Her people are on board, and it helped them both stay relevant, so... They're not dating? Now Sero snorts. Bakugo isn't horrible to Uraraka-san, but I don't think she'd put up with having him as a boyfriend. So he's not a homewrecker. That's one less thing to worry about, at least. I'm sorry, what does any of this have to do with me? Sero leans forward with a glint in his eye. Suddenly, he looks every bit the calculating professional he must be if he manages Bakugou Katsuki. If Bakugo is going to upend all of our efforts with the press, we're going to make it happen in a way that helps his career, rather than tanking it. He's popular enough that people might tolerate him coming out, but they're definitely not going to accept him if he's running around getting caught with a different guy every week. What our agency thinks is that the public can handle a gay man, but only if he's tied down. Committed. I don't understand. Kirishima's mouth is dry. He's trying very hard not to think about Bakugo, leaning over him and smelling like a campfire. He's trying very hard not to think about his heated stare or the sharp jut of his collarbones. Sero looks up and grins widely. Don't worry so much, Kirishima. I wouldn't even be making this offer if I didn't think it'd help out you too. Offer? Kirishima repeats skeptically. Sero nods. It's the chance of a lifetime, really. We want you to date Bakugo, for the sake of his reputation with the press. Some public appearances, a few candid photos. For at least a couple of months. Bakugo sent you to ask me to date him? Kirishima asks, baffled. Of course not. We, his people, are asking you to date him. He's going to have to get on board if he wants his career to survive. And in the bargain, Riot will get all sorts of publicity, because their lyricist will be dating one of the industry's hottest stars. A win for everyone. Kirishima doesn't know if it's because he woke up past noon, but his brain is having a difficult time processing all of this. Somewhere, a voice in his head is crowing, "Do it! Date Bakugou Katsuki! When are you ever going to get a chance like this again?" But that voice is quickly drowned out by half a dozen others, each expressing anxiety or confusion or apprehension. I'll give you some time to think about it, okay? Sero says kindly. He pulls out a metallic grey business card and leaves it on the counter. I have to go make some calls, deal with the fallout from last night. The quicker you decide, the more it'd help me out. Give me a call soon, okay? As he gets up and passes Kirishima, he reaches out to pat his shoulder. I never really knew what you saw in Bakugo before I started working him, but now it's different. He's not a bad guy. I really want to see his star keep rising, you know? 2 hours later, Kirishima sits on the couch, sandwiched between Ashido and Kaminari. Jiro is across from them, cross-legged on the floor. Ashido and Kaminari haven't stopped yelling for the past 15 minutes, and Kirishima is starting to get a headache. They want you to date Bakugo, Kaminari yelps, for perhaps the 5th time. He's caught between giggles and hysterics. Can you even handle that? Have you ever tried to fake anything before, in your whole life? You let Sero into our apartment without even telling me, Ashido interrupts, eyes flashing. What if I had woken up to come get breakfast? What if I was in my underwear and he was just sitting there at our breakfast nook? Why are you coming to breakfast in your underwear? Kirishima asks weakly. You can't do this. It'll be a disaster, Kaminari continues. Have you seen that guy? I know you have a thing for shitheads with hard abs, but come on. Everyone knows his personality's been run through the sewage pipes a couple times. I mean, Sarah's right. It wouldn't hurt us, Ashido continues, voice still pitched at a whine. Being seen around town with him, everyone would ask who you are, and then everyone would ask about the band. It wouldn't be bad. What about the bad fact of our Kirishima dating some guy who's apparently been faking it with the same girl for like 3 years? Kaminari throws his head back. He turns to Kirishima and says, You've got a fragile heart. This guy's obviously a player. It'd be fake with me too, Kirishima says, chewing on the inside of his cheek. And my heart is manly and tough. Get off me. He pushes Kaminari away, but that does little to deter him. Can you idiots get serious? For a moment? Jiro asks tiredly. She'd been sitting on the ground, contemplating for long minutes now. There's one part of this we haven't thought about at all. What's that? Kaminari and Ashido ask in unison. Jiro dismisses them with a wave of her hand, then focuses on Kirishima. Do you want to fake date Bakugo? Do you want to have to do with press events and photo shoots and all that other stuff? Are you even considering this? As soon as she asks, Kirishima knows that he's not just considering it. He's already made up his mind. Being around Bakugo last night had been confusing, to say the least. But it was also intoxicating. And if it'd benefit the band, he'd probably be willing to do just about anything. He knows that none of the others are going to force him to do something he doesn't want to do, but he also doesn't know what he can really do to push their collective dream forward. And maybe, at his core, Kirishima is selfish. He wants to get to know Bakugo, and to just be around him, even if the premise is a fake one. In any case, it'd be dishonorable to let Bakugo's career struggle just because someone caught them standing near each other. Bakugo had moved in, but Kirishima hadn't moved away. In some way, isn't this his fault too? Ashido rests a hand on Kirishima's shoulders. We're going to support you, no matter what. Kaminari sighs. Obviously, he says, with only a little reluctance. Jiro purses her lips to hide a smirk. At least you won't have to fake your big, stupid crush on him. Shut up, Kirishima groans. The others all laugh. Kirishima calls Sero a while later. I'm in, I think. Just, before this goes any further, can I meet him? Like, really, not for the cameras. Sero gives Kirishima the address of a cafe downtown that he's never been to. He rushes out the door before Ashido can insist on dressing him, and immediately regrets it. He's wearing one of his many faded band tees, this one a tangerine orange, with Fat Gum's logo printed across it, and an old pair of cargo shorts. Still, Kirishima tells himself, this is a condition, not an actual fake date. There's a contradiction rolled up in that sentence somewhere, but in any case, he shouldn't have to worry about how he's dressed. A bell rings as Kirishima pushes open the door of the cafe. It's a quiet place, decorated all in pale yellow and cream. Kirishima passes by the dessert counter, eyes widening as he reads the price cards on the macarons and scones. He glances back up at the signs, and suddenly it clicks. Sugar rush, he thinks, resisting the urge to smack his forehead with his palm. Sato Rikido had been at the party last night. This is the cafe adjunct of his bigger restaurant. No wonder the prices are so exorbitant. Kirishima-san? A young woman in a pale yellow apron approaches him, bobbing her head. Bakugo-san is waiting for you. She points out a booth in the back of the cafe, with high-backed seats that don't let other customers see who's there. Kirishima swallows roughly, before thanking the woman and heading for the booth. Be normal, he tells himself as he walks across the cafe. Be normal. He's just a regular guy, and a regular guy you're gonna have to date. Don't treat him like an alien. Don't gawk at him. Don't stare at his abs. Wait, won't he be wearing a shirt? Please let him be wearing a shirt. Kirishima is so lost in his thoughts that he barely realizes when he comes to stand in front of the booth. Then, someone clears their throat. Well? Bakugo snaps. Are you gonna sit down, or what? Shitty hair. Kirishima is definitely underdressed. Bakugo is wearing a crisp black button-down, open over a red t-shirt. There's a pair of sunglasses pushed back into his hair, and he's drumming his fingers against the table impatiently. He's more dressed up than he'd been at Hagakure's party, but more real than Kirishima's ever seen him in a television commercial or billboard. Hello, Bakugo says, reaching over to punch Kirishima in the shoulder. Are you even listening to me? Kirishima winces, rubbing at his shoulder where Bakugo had hit him. Yes, jeez. He quickly sits down opposite Bakugo, frowning at him. And it's Kirishima, you know, not shitty hair. Bakugo leans back into his seat, crossing his arms over his chest. Whatever. No, not whatever, Kirishima says, slightly miffed. I mean, if we're going to date, you should know my name. Honestly, you should probably call me Eijirou. Bakugo looks up at him with a disgusted expression. Like hell. There's something less than hostile about his response, more confused than genuinely angry. Kirishima wonders, suddenly, if Bakugo has ever actually dated anyone. If he's been pretending to be with Uraraka, would he have been able to? I could call you Katsuki, Kirishima says, unable to stop the smile playing at his lips. He's reminded of science classes back in high school, of leaning with Ashido over the same lab table and titrating an acid with little drips of solution. Kirishima had often let too much in at once, but Ashido had a defter touch, able to calibrate things correctly with enough patience and effort. Bakugo glares at him with such intensity. Kirishima is surprised he doesn't catch on fire. "Call me that ever again, and I will rip off your leg and beat you dead with it," Bakugo spits. Kirishima laughs. "Dude, that's not very nice. And I'll call you Bakugo then, if you call me Kirishima. Deal?" Whatever. Bakugo looks even more sullen now. Kirishima doesn't know exactly how to deal with this. He knew that dating was Sero's idea, not Bakugo's, but he still didn't expect Bakugo to look so utterly miserable at the idea. "Look," he says, pitching his voice a bit lower. There's no one sitting around them in the cafe, but there's no harm in being careful. "I don't know what Sero said to you, but if you don't want to do this, I don't want to either." Bakugo's still staring at him. "You think soy sauce can actually tell me what to do?" he demands. Kirishima rests his elbows against the table, then presses his hands against his face. "Are you just being contrary on purpose?" he asks. When Bakugo doesn't answer after a moment, Kirishima blinks his eye open to see that Bakugo's gaze has dropped from his face down to his arms. "What?" Kirishima asks. Bakugo's brows cut a sharp crease over his eyes. "You have tattoos." Kirishima glances down, then shrugs. "Huh? Oh, yeah. I guess you couldn't see them last night." He's particularly fond of the designs of these. An ornate sword on the interior of his right forearm, cutting a long line from his wrist to the joint of his elbow. On his opposite side is a matching shield, both inked in stark black against his skin. Bakugo scowls at him. "You don't make any goddamn sense." Kirishima arches a brow. "I'm a musician with tattoos. I think that makes more sense than anything else about me, probably. Anyway, I chose this spot because when you're singing into a mic, your arms face the crowd. See?" He demonstrates the position, curling his arms around an imaginary microphone. "But you don't sing," Bakugo tells him. Kirishima laughs sheepishly. "Well, that's true. And, wait, how'd you even know that?" Bakugo rolls his eyes. "I do my fucking research, arsehole." He pauses to consider that, for a moment, then takes a deep breath. "Hey, how about we start over? Hi, I'm Kirishima Eijirou." He pauses, but Bakugo says nothing. "And you are?" Bakugo blinks at him. "You fucking know who I am." Kirishima frowns and kicks him under the table. "Fuck. Fine." Bakugo huffs. "I'm Bakugo." "Nice to meet you," Kirishima says with forced pleasantness. "So, why do you want me to pretend to be your boyfriend?" "I thought soy sauce already explained this shit to you. What am I paying him for? I know what Sero said." Kirishima interrupts. "But I want to know what you think." Bakugo says nothing for a moment, then shrugs. "He explained it to you, didn't he? The agency thinks that if I don't have a boyfriend, it'll fuck up my image. And I don't really care about any of that bullshit, but I'm stuck with the rest of it. If this gets me what I want, then fine. I'll do it." "And what is what you want?" Kirishima almost asks. But he doesn't think that Bakugo will be any more forthcoming. "Okay," he says after a moment. "Then I guess we're a team now." Bakugo pulls a face. "Aren't you an actor?" Kirishima asks, feigning incredulity. "If you can't even pretend to like me, I don't see how anyone's going to want to hire you." "Fuck you," Bakugo says, with less bite than before. "You're the one who's going to have to worry about selling it. Just wait, I'm going to date the hell out of you until you're coughing up blood." "I think someone needs to explain to you how dating works," Kirishima says, a bit uncertainly. But another part of him thinks, oh, Bakugo's going to take dating him very seriously. And Kirishima's imagination runs with that, until he's lost sight of the person sitting in front of him. "I'm leaving," Bakugo says, getting up and letting his sunglasses drop over his eyes. "What for?" Kirishima asks, also getting to his feet. "I have to get fitted for the premiere on Friday," Bakugo growls. "You're going to be there too." Bakugou Katsuki's latest role is in Ground Zero, a spy thriller co-starring Todoroki Ch.2, another UA alumnus. Kirishima had heard about the film, had even marked its premiere date months ago, but had forgotten about it until now. Sitting on the couch, laptop propped on his knees, he looks at the poster with a curious expression. Bakugo and Todoroki are centered in the shot, both wearing sharp suits and holding guns. They're angled away from each other, but Bakugo looks back over his shoulder at Todoroki. Behind them, visible inside the bloom of an explosion, is a woman with dark hair and an even darker smile. Yosuro Momo, playing the film's villain. Lucky, Jiro says, passing by. I want to go to a Momo movie premiere. Maybe I can bring a guest? Kirishima suggests. Jiro waves him off. Dude, you don't get a +1. You are the +1. Kirishima supposes that's right, though he's still having a hard time wrapping his head around the concept. Someone knocks on the door, 3 times in quick succession. Kirishima jumps up to go answer it as Jiro makes her way back to her room. At the door stands a man with shiny golden blonde hair. His eyes are a blue so bright and pale, they seem almost purple, and he's wearing a silky white shirt and a truly blinding pair of metallic silver snakeskin pants. He has a garment bag casually draped over his shoulder, and when he sees Kirishima, he snaps his fingers, showing off several jeweled rings. This is what I'm working with, he says to no one, words strangely accented. Hello, Monsieur Kirishima. I am Aoyama Yuga, and I've been sent to make you look presentable. Kirishima has never had a stylist before. The label keeps track of Riot's image for shows, but no one really cares if Kirishima wants to wear just jeans and a t-shirt on stage. Kaminari dresses far flashier, and Jiro has the punk aesthetic locked down. Add in Ashido's flair for tight, brightly coloured clothing, and that's enough to grab anyone's attention. Aside from fussing over his hair, Kirishima's never cared too much about his appearance. He knows that no matter what he does, he's not going to be the one drawing eyes. And yet, now he's being shaved and cologned and made up, dressed in a suit that fits him perfectly, even though he doesn't remember giving anyone his measurements. The suit is a deep blue collar, over a black dress shirt. Aoyama does all the buttons, but leaves off a tie. You're not supposed to look like a businessman. You're a rock star. Then attacks Kirishima's face with makeup. Kaminari, Jiro, and Ashido all mess around with eyeliner at the least, but Kirishima's never had much patience for it. Aoyama tuts at him impatiently, mutters something about glare in photos, but seems content with a bit of powder and some strategic color dusted over Kirishima's skin. Do you know what I'm supposed to do? Kirishima asks, as he's lacing up his black dress shoes. Aoyama gives him a skeptical look. What does anyone's date do with these things? Hold his hand on the red carpet, step aside when he's giving an interview, be thankful I won't be there, taking all the attention for myself. Kirishima's phone buzzes with a text notification quickly after that. His ride is downstairs, and when he steps back into the main part of the apartment, Kaminari, Jiro, and Ashido are all waiting to gawk at him. Kaminari has one hand pressed over his mouth. Fuck, sometimes I forget how hot you are. Knock him dead, Kirishima. Jiro gives him a thumbs up. Try not to take all the attention from the movie stars, okay? Ashido chirps. Kirishima feels his face getting as red as his hair, but thankfully he hears a honk from downstairs, and has the excuse of rushing out the door. He doesn't know what to do with the way the others were looking at him. He doesn't even know if he likes that sort of attention. Bakugo is already seated in the back of the town car when Kirishima slips inside. He's sitting with his knees spread apart, dressed in a charcoal-collared suit and a white shirt. His shirt is unbuttoned to expose his throat, and he barely casts Kirishima a second glance as he stares moodily out the window. Kirishima swallows as he gets seated. Bakugo's pale hair is fluffed up in its regular style, but there's something more deliberate about the way the certain strands fall over his eyes today. Kirishima imagines he must be wearing makeup too, but his skin looks no different from the last time they'd met. Smooth and unblemished. The faint smell of cologne drifts through the car, a different scent than the one Aoyama had spritzed Kirishima with. So, Kirishima says, after a moment's awkward silence. Are you excited? Bakugo barely turns his head to blink at him. I've been to 1,000 of these stupid things. What's there to be excited about? Kirishima considers that. He's performed the same songs dozens of times over, even in the short time he's been a part of Riot. It's still exciting, even if they play the same set 2 nights in a row. He wonders if he'll ever reach a point at which he finds it boring. You're not the star of every movie you go to a premiere of, are you? Kirishima asks, still trying to break into the realm of normal conversation. I bet all the eyes will be on you tonight. They better be. Bakugo turns back to stare out the window, a clear dismissal. But Kirishima persists. What do you want me to do? He asks. Now, Bakugo turns back to him, the expression of confusion and frustration ghosting over his face. I don't want you to do anything, he mutters. Just be my date. Fucking cares. Kirishima grinds his teeth together. He thinks back to the later seasons of UA, when Bakugo's character had been set on winning Urarakas. He'd gone about it all wrong at first. Emotional outbursts, but no clear declaration of his feelings. Had been terrible to her friends, while still trying to convince her he was worth it. But over time, he'd softened. There'd been a particularly poignant episode when Uraraka's character had lost her mother, and Bakugo's had arrived at the hospital just in time to hold her as she fell. Kirishima remembers the tenderness of that embrace, the softness of Bakugo's expression, because he'd watched that episode at least a dozen times. But Bakugo isn't that character, is he? He's someone else entirely. Someone who's probably never actually been in a relationship before. They should pay me for this, Kirishima says out loud. Bakugo huffs out something that might have been a laugh. Yeah, no shit. You could have asked for money and soy sauce would have given it to you. Idiot. Kirishima grimaces, then remembers Aoyama's instructions. I'm gonna hold your hand, he tells Bakugo. Bakugo's eyes go wide. What the fuck? On the red carpet, Kirishima tells him. I'm gonna hold your hand so everyone knows I'm your date. You're an idiot, Bakugo tells him. Kirishima shrugs it off. Maybe, but you're the gold star actor who's gonna sell this, aren't you? And that means you have to hold my hand. The car comes to a stop shortly after that, and the driver coming around to open the door on Bakugo's side. Bakugo jerks his head towards the door and asks uncaringly, Are you ready or not, Kirishima? It's the first time he's used Kirishima's name. In return, Kirishima grins. Hell yeah, let's do this. He's not prepared for the roar of noise, people calling out questions, camera bulbs flashing, music playing, or the torrent of light and sound. In reality, he's not prepared for any of this.